Are you envious, Michael Bryant? We're both in green. I'm
A lot of
kind of
green.
well. Let me tell you, there's a verdict, a clock, and a justice watch, as we call it, awaiting in Massachusetts. So we're turning green, waiting for it. What do you think?
I know. I think I'm going to have to wash this shirt because we'll be back over the weekend. It could get a little ripe by then.
Justice, where are you? Michael and Linda are here.
Love you, Linda.
Where is justice? Will we ever find justice?
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing
Will
"Oh
we know
Happy Day."
justice when we see it? To be and Damila lead the way, hoping justice will win the day. It's Nary Clues, finding justice where we can. Join us now, we're on the run. Justice is waiting, we'll see it done.
All right, quite the day in the Walshe trial with closing arguments and then a jury question and then nothing. I got like 3 hours, 45 minutes, give or take. They were into
Yeah,
it.
you know what? You and I talked about that. You could have a Friday verdict, but they didn't go out until 2:00. Juries aren't going to come back in 2 hours. They don't even come back. 2 hours and 20 minutes. Okay, we have OJ, but
Well,
2
yeah.
hours is. I had a jury
It's
come
nothing,
back
I
in
know.
a murder case in a little over an hour, though.
Yeah, it could happen, but it doesn't surprise me where we are. And they
Right.
got the case at 12:30. We don't know what happened with lunch. Was that part? It's always a guess. But from that 12:30 to the time they quit for the day, which was basically 4, which was what we expected, they were
Right.
going to have a normal court day if they weren't to a verdict. In that period of time, they had a question, and then that's it. So in their minds, even though it is Friday, they got a week to play with. Remember, the judge told them last Friday, we got 2 more weeks.
Right.
And here they are a week later, and they've got the case. So,
Right.
I think, I didn't really perceive them as like, can we get the hell out of here? Every time I watched them, they seemed to be attentive, and only one person did I find that I felt was sort of checked out, and maybe she's just subtle about her listening and activity. I don't know, but now we know the 4 that are gone, or at least we know that. And I've tried to figure it out based on my scientific chart here.
Oh, look at that. But you know what? You put that back up, because when we're in the courtrtem as lawyers, we're like doing that. Okay, we're doing that. It's not all
2 rows.
computers and
Well,
everything's fancy.
We've gone
the
through.
fancy is you're too quick to get the fancy up and running.
I just think it's easier, and I used the Post-its for the whittling down process, and then I set that aside and I kind of put it more. And then when I went to the court, I could then put these descriptors in. So the question becomes, it's a question I wish I knew 100% sure, how they numbered the jurors. Was it 1 to 8 front row, left to right, and then 9 to 16 back row, left to right? That's what I think. Okay. Why that's important is it tells us who was left on the jury, who was not, and who the foreperson is. So I'm going to go with that understanding unless I hear otherwise from somebody. So let's work on this backwards. We'll look at what the jury is. We'll look at their question. We'll look at the important jury instruction, because it did include a lesser, which I think there is some confusion about. And then we'll look at maybe some of the closing arguments, and for those who haven't seen some of the high points, because they were, one was 45-ish minutes. That was Mr. Tipton for the defense, and then about 33 minutes for Miss. I always think I'm going to mispronounce her name. I think it's Yas, but I keep thinking somehow I'm going to mispronounce that.
And
Anyway.
interesting, the judge put a 45-minute limit on closings, but said if you go over, it's okay, because usually in Massachusetts they're limited to an hour, no matter how long your trial is. We know that from cases I've been in Massachusetts, and the Karen Reed case that you've all watched.
Yeah, and what they did was she asked them first before even picking a number. She said, "How long do you think you might go?" And the defense said, 45's plenty. And I think the Commonwealth just didn't really disagree or otherwise. So she said, okay, let's shoot for 45. And as you said, if you go a little bit longer, I'm not going to, get out the hook and pull you off the stage.
I loved her, by the way.
Me too.
Loved her. Yeah.
Every day I see her do her thing, I like more and more what she does. Today, what stood out were 2 things. First of all, she split the instructions in half, which I think is it's a brilliant idea. The jury's, we're in short attention span theater here, and this stuff gets a little dry, as important as it is. So she broke it out and did some of the general instructions up front, closings, and then the more specific instructions as to the charges, the elements of the charges, the unanimity issues, all of those things, credibility issues of witnesses, all those things were the very last thing they heard before they went off to deliberate. So.
Right.
And
they had a jury that was selected for them by the judge in Massachusetts. It's statutory.
The four-person
statute. The four-person gives the judge the ability to select the four-person, and judges have various ideas that they put into it. So I think whatever she thought this would be the best four-person for the jury, whether it be a note taker or a listener or somebody who was more attentive or somebody who didn't show any motion. We don't know, but whatever this judge did, some judges, when they do it, you don't trust it, right? This judge, he trusted everything she did. She was fabulous. I don't usually like to listen to jury instructions, and today I was so busy I really couldn't listen to some of them, but I could listen to some of them, as I said.
Yeah.
And I was like riveted, like this was a Broadway play that I was waiting for the conclusion for. Oh,
Yes,
really? It was fabulous.
Yeah, and the final act is still coming. But she had vocal variety. She was adding a little personality to the instructions. And I do like, as she has from the beginning, she stands right near the jury box as best she can get. She gets up out of her fluffy chair, gets over there, and does the best she can to connect. So all those.
I've never seen that. Have you ever seen that? A judge turning over and going to stand and go and give jury instructions to the jury? I've never seen that in my career ever.
And the respect and the connection. It's it's so funny because that's common sense. In any other setting, the host would do that for the guests, right? They would make them feel welcome and respected and connect with them. So welcome to my courtroom. Come on in. Here's what we're going to do. So she's great. My fear, and I don't know, not a fear, but it'd be unfortunate when she elevates, as I'm assuming she will, because she's a great trial judge.
Oh, they should send her right to the Supreme Judicial Court. Really, forget the middle, but she is a great trial judge. But as a great trial judge, I think that's why she should go to the Supreme Judicial Court.
Yeah, and that's the way it works generally.
Right.
And by the way, the SJC, as of I haven't checked it in the last hour or so. Maybe I should check while we're here just to make sure. But they hadn't made a decision yet on the Kelsey Fitzsimmons matter. So let me update that just real quickly here while the system checks to make sure I'm human. Sometimes, that was very quick. Sometimes I'm not really, takes a while. Nope, nothing new. So nothing new in the Fitzsimmons matter.
Yeah. Well, we know the alternate jurors were 5, 11, 12, and 15. We know that. And we know the jury four-person is juror number 6.
Yeah, so let me tell you what I think based on this. What it tells
and
us.
one other thing before you tell me, 6 women and 6 men, because I know someone's going to ask gender.
Oh, the final you mean with 6 men and 6 women? Let me check, see how that works against my numbers.
And the alternates are 3 women and 1 man.
That squares with what I've got.
Okay, perfect. I knew it would. That's why I suggested.
But
I knew you were in the courtroom for 2 days.
Yeah, but I didn't. They aren't carrying numbers. So unless you start at the right part of the jury and number sequentially from there, the numbers won't mean anything. So did you get, since you're throwing out some of the info, did you get gender and ethnicity of the four-person?
No, it's the one thing I did not get.
Okay.
I failed. I failed in the most important question. Sorry.
The way,
I failed.
Depending on which way you count, it's either a white male in about the 50 range. Okay. And by the way, if it is that guy, that's the headbanger guy that was nodding yesterday when the judge was going over burden of proof and the importance of not shifting it to the defense. If it's that guy, that would be counting from number 1, top row, left side across, 1 through 8, bottom row, 9 through 16. It could also be the opposite. First row, 1 through 8, top row, 9 through 16. So it's either that 50-ish white male or the 40-ish black female. Now, she's the one that was very animated next to her buddy who was a white male, about 40-ish. When they had the issues with a crush on Jem, remember that, the associate and friend of Anna, and there was objections, and the jury was really left to speculate about why they holding this up, and the whole marital problems thing. They were connecting. There was, if not some nudging, there was some heads turning toward one another, and so there was a connection there. that's 50-50 chance that's the foreperson. And again, I'll learn more as I try and kind of suss out
And
how
then,
that all
yeah,
happened.
we'll see what it is. And I just want to tell you that my client Aidan Carty was in the courtroom today, listening to the closings.
Yep, I heard the
and
buzz that he was on his way there. You know,
yeah, I was in
so
the
was
closings.
Buchanan.
And so was
wonder if he said hi to
Buchanan.
Aidan.
Yes, I wonder
talk.
how that went. I wonder how that went. And also Mrs. Walsh, who lives in Serbia, was in the courtroom, and of course, no, not Mrs. Walsh, Mrs. Walsh being it doesn't live in Serbia. Mrs. Walsh being the mother of the defendant, right? Brian Walsh was in the courtroom. Apparently, she's still alone. When you saw her, she was alone in the rows, right?
Every day. She's
every
right
day.
in front of me every day.
And then Anna's mother was apparently came from Serbia. She was in the courtroom. She doesn't live in the United States, from what I understand. So
Gotcha. Okay, but she was there today.
So I mean, you know, this is your daughter, and I can't even imagine what it's like to sit there and look at Brian Walsh, because you know that he chopped her up.
Yeah, you know what he's admitted to. Yeah, and that's enough to turn your stomach. Glamma Sue's.
Oh, she wasn't there. I thought she was there. I thought many media outlets are reporting that Anna's mother was there. Okay, all right, then I'll take it back if she wasn't there.
I wasn't there to confirm for you. She did warn them juries tend to lose attention after 45 minutes. Yeah, short attention span theater. So, you know, don't tell Joe Tacopina. That's all I can say. So he will not put up with that.
Well, it's
hey, Granny Debbie.
It's interesting because I think Massachusetts jurors probably also know the court system. Some have probably served on jury duty before. We weren't there for the voir dire, but they know exactly that it's like an hour, right, at the most at closings. It's not like other states where the judge will say to you, how long do you think you need? Okay, I'm going to limit you to X, Y, and Z, or if you need a little more, I'll give you a little more. But they're just very strict on the rules in terms of closings.
Okay, here we get some help on it. This helps narrow things down. Jury foreperson, the white male puffy coat guy. Okay, well that's now I know better how they're counting, because that is the guy on the back row, and again he's the headbanger.
He's the one who, when you were talking about, why don't you tell everybody what you were talking about again, because someone may not have heard. Someone may not have heard how you explained him.
So this is interesting because this changes my total overview. If it's I'm basing this on people who have talked to somebody or have been there. I reached out to a couple folks that were not in the courtroom today, but had been when I was there. Mom at 25L or 2SL, sorry, says it's the puffy coat guy. So the other day, this was yesterday. It feels like it was a long time ago. Yesterday, when the defendant decided he was not going to testify, and the defense decided they were not going to put on any witnesses, the court went to her. She went to Judge Frontier to the parapet. Is that a parapet or is that a balcony? What would that be? Where it's kind of like overlooking things. In this case, overlooking the jury box, and she's talking to her subjects, to the jury members, and saying it's so important that you do not hold the defendant to any burden of proof in this case. The burden is purely on the Commonwealth. It never changes. Keep that in mind. And during that recitation of the law, this guy was just nodding his head very aggressively. And I thought it was odd. I just thought when I saw it that it was almost cartoonish, like overdoing it, kind of. But if he felt that, honest and sincere about it, it's like, yes, you tell him, sister. Amen. It just seemed very.
Maybe that had something to do with why Judge Frontier picked him.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Or was there did she actually pick something out of a box and we just don't know it? Was there a tumbler and then she used a tumbler and we just don't know it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we because that was before the tumbler came out. I mean, it was there. So it made it sound like her decision was purely independent. And everybody said, I saw a lot of chat and a lot of X comments about, I thought in Massachusetts, they just do the number one juror. No. That's the Bev court. That's the Bev rule. So.
Actually, I love that rule. I have that.
Well, it's easier and it makes it, like, well, I'm not being discriminatory. I always just go with number one, whoever number one happens to be. Definitely the dude I'd want to have a beer or 10 with. All right, then.
Was that you?
Cheers.
What are you having? You're drinking Justice Dewar.
I should have a big belt to this. Every day they don't make a decision.
All right. All right.
I have
Hello, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Hello, Massachusetts. I'll drink Duncan.
Quincy. I got to go by there. I think they have a picture of you up on the wall, Quincy. Okay, so let's look at it with that understanding, and the understanding then being from 1 to 8 across the back row, 9 to 16 across the front row. Let's look at those that have been dismissed according to my numbering schedule. Number 12 would be front row, 9, 10, 11, 12. That would be a white male. Okay. Number 5, that would be across the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be a white male.
Wait a second. I thought there were 3 females dismissed and 1 man.
That's what I'm saying. I'm only going by assuming that Mr. Puffycoat, back row, number 6.
This is. Let me tell you. Usually we give you accurate, complete information. This is like I'm in a poker game. I'm getting half information and I have to make a good decision here.
You do. You've got.
I'm incomplete.
There may be a bluff, and I don't know. Yeah, it's 50-50 shot because they either started numbering from the back row across or from the front row. I mean, there's really not many other options. So 15 would be, again, assuming that front row is 9 through 5. That would be a black female. No, that would be a white female. Okay, and then number 11, again, off the front row, would be a black female. So that's all I can tell you.
Okay, I think that there's something awry here, but okay, all right. In any event, they're all.
Where did you get your information about those? About
I was reading the internet earlier.
Oh, okay, so it's no better than what we're hearing right now.
I was reading all the reporters in the courtroom earlier. They all tend to agree, but courtroom reporters can get it wrong. I've had lawyers on your team. You get it wrong. Wait, didn't the judge say that person was dismissed? Why is that person getting help?
Yeah, no, I know.
Or a jury stands up being dismissed because they had thought they were using different numbers and they'd forgotten what their number is. I mean, it becomes very stressful in that courtroom to remember things.
Yeah, and she did identify people both by their number and by their seat position when they were moved around. And the 4 alts are now in some other room, not to talk about it. Just they're sequestered in the same way that the normal jury is, because what they do there is, unlike some courts in Massachusetts, that pod is hanging out and sterile and ready to go into the system if necessary. It's unfortunate that if that does happen, they start the entire process over again, which I'm fine with. It's just because otherwise what happens
the
is
entire process of deliberation.
Yes, yes.
What you have is that this is, again, like in Jersey and many federal courts, the pot of people removed, right? The alternates go in a separate sterile facility, so to speak. They get to talk among themselves. But whenever there's a question, they are supposed to come back and listen to the question for the jurors. I mean, I've had courts bring them back in, and then I've had other courts who don't bring them back in. Okay.
Well, you know what she said as she was talking about that when she sent them out, she made it clear that having you come back in is very rare for her.
For her, okay.
So when there was a question,
so I gave you good information there.
So when they had a question today, they did not come back in. Nobody came back in. So what they had a question about, I might as well jump to this before I do some of the jury instruction stuff. Trust is love. What did I miss about the purse in the dumpster? The jury came back with a question. I missed it. Now, I haven't seen it reported anywhere else because maybe nobody has the list of exhibits like I have, because that's kind of a thing I do. I'm not saying it's perfect. I heard somebody talking about it was trash from the dumpster, and that's sort of true. From my notes, Exhibit 97, which is what they were asking about, is the Prada purse. Now, let me bring up that it was not identified. People are confused in part because there were 269 exhibits. Not every single one was singled out, shown to the jury, talked about through a witness, but they were marked and made part of the chunk that's going into the jury room. In most cases, the trash, it wasn't the actual trash, it was a picture of pieces, and then the hatchet, the hammer, the hacksaw, those were the actual items that went in as evidence. The knife. But let me bring up this
and because it's Fashion Friday, you told everyone that it was a Prada purse.
Yes, well, I believe that's the state of the evidence. So this was the closest we got to a picture or image of the purse. This was the bags. This is bag number 1. You see the number 1 there. This is bag number 1.
And bag number 1 being what?
From the 10 bags they got out of the big dumpster. Not the dumpster, I'll call it the collection area. It's kind of a Quonset hut where they take the dumpsters and they dump them all out, and then you sift through, and then they took blankets or butcher paper. And there was an argument about not using the word butcher paper. One of the exhibits was referenced by a witness as butcher paper. The court wanted it to just be called bench paper. Defense did not want it to be called butcher paper.
As a matter of fact,
in the context of this case.
Well, as a matter of fact, when one of the lab technicians testified on the DNA, and they was talking about his procedure, I think it was the first one, he said, and he lays down, pause, bench paper, okay? Yeah. It's always called butcher paper, okay? Of course. That's what you call it in the DNA lab. So I guess they were instructed not to. It was the first time in a courtroom I hadn't heard it called butcher paper. It actually kind of like, wow, somebody did a great job here.
I've never heard it called bench paper, ever.
No,
you know, and why is it called that simple?
Sterile lab paper or something like that.
Yeah, you go to the butcher, that's the paper they use to butcher meat or whatever you buy in. It's butcher paper.
Usually brown. It's normal. Usually when
I
you
don't know about that. You think so?
I've seen it mostly brown, but it could be white.
I see it mostly white. Maybe that's West Coast, East Coast. I don't know.
Maybe that's cheap versus one's cheaper to buy than the other.
Well, let's see. Brown is usually
excuse me. I'm having an allergy attack with my eyes. I apologize.
Are you all right? You good? You
okay? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm still good. I can still hear.
So here's the butcher paper upon which they laid the contents of bag 1. There were 10 bags. So this was in bag 1, and it was identified. Let me see. Maybe I have some audio here where he talks about the contents. That'd be great, wouldn't it, if I had that? Let's see.
Yeah.
Did you have the opportunity to know what was inside this bag 1?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us what was discovered inside of bag 1?
Inside of bag 1 was a pair of green boots, a black jacket with red-brown stains, and a bracelet inside of the pocket. There was a black purse with red-brown stains, a black wallet, and a pair of headphones inside of a case, as well as a pair of socks.
There you go. So there's not even a real good picture of it from what I can recall, but this would be up here in the corner, the black purse, right? And then here's the black wallet next to the boots. So somehow they focused on, they asked for 97. They had a list of some sort. The court really kind of criticized the court officers because the exhibits were not that well organized, but somehow they focused on 97 on the list. That was this purse, and that's all we know. It had brownish, reddish stains on it. It had DNA from both Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe, and that's all I know about it. So,
yeah, that's really interesting. They're looking at it because one of the things I pointed out earlier, I think the other day, and I talked about it, is that when these items are all found in the dumpster, what's not found is a pair of like pajamas or a house dress or something. I mean, you're not sleeping in your jacket with your Prada purse and your boots on. Okay.
That's true.
Generally, you could be in Alaska, it could be on a glacier, maybe then you are, but maybe it was that cold. I don't know. This looks like clothes that somebody would be wearing when they were getting dressed to leave the house.
Maybe storm out in a huff, maybe storm out after a fight.
Right.
A disagreement, the emergency that she had to go back to DC. Yeah, all of that unknown. I mean, this is what's weird. We're speculating about all this stuff. There's zero evidence of any of that in front of the jury. Nothing. So,
look, we know he chopped her up. Okay, I don't care what he admitted. What he admitted to. As we're discussing this, we don't have to do the particularities of what happened. We know he chopped her up. Simple as that. So.
Now, Kyle Sharkey's saying that the landlord testified at 10:05 that 97 was a rug. So
the picture of her on the rug. They wanted a picture of her on the rug.
I don't know. I don't have that number. I could see me being off a couple of numbers, and the rug is part of the trash. But we know the picture we're talking about is one they had to crop because it had her laying on her back.
Right.
And kids were in it, and they cut them out.
Yeah, and the jury didn't get that. No, just a picture of the
I
rug.
could see them wanting a piece of the rug, and I could also see me having a number off in terms of the trash they found because the rug was
Well, whatever it is, they wanted that picture, and then they wanted relative to something with the purse. I mean, that there was something.
Well, yeah, and if I'm off on the number and they only wanted the rug, I don't know what you'd want to see from the rug that you didn't hear about in.
I know what I'd want to see from the purse.
There's a lot of pieces.
I want to see if there was anything in the purse. You know, I'd want to see what was there, or was things taken out? Was it dumped? You know, what was there?
And they didn't. You know, they mentioned in the coat that there was a bracelet or something inside. The coat
in the pocket.
I guess that's part of what's laying next to it there with a couple of other.
Well, there's an AirPod. There's AirPods. They said that one of the containers had a bunch of AirPods in them, which again he'd bring. But where's the phone? No phone.
There's all kinds of little gadgetry there that was never specifically identified.
Yeah, they asked. This is what I always wondered. Where were the kids while he's chopping? He's chopping. There's no doubt about it. He just didn't load that hacksaw with the piece of bone that I think,
which was never identified as a piece of bone in trial.
It was never identified. That's what got me, because it was a pre-trial. We all heard the piece of bone. They thought it was from her skull. Blah blah blah, and then no one ever identified it. So I mean, that's a problem, because the jury doesn't know that supposedly he chopped it. What did he do? What did he do? Why does he have a hacksaw? Why does he have all that equipment if he's not?
Yep, that's a good question. And people are asking, what happened to the Home Depot buckets with lids? Because we only really see the blue Lowe's buckets,
right?
Not the ones we saw him buy, the orange ones from Home Depot.
Yeah. So what does he wrap her up in her coat? Wrap her up in her coat to take her out to dispose of her? He's not disposing of a whole body. I don't think. Not in that period of time.
Not likely. And the buckets could contain, her parts. And he got rid of them in a dumpster or wherever, and it just got hauled away before anybody got to it.
Yeah. Because usually they notice when they're dumping the dumpsters a body coming out. They notice a whole body, unless that's covered up in some way. But you
would think. And I can tell you those buckets, they remained, when you snap that lid on there, they're pretty good. Yeah. They're pretty solid. So.
Whatever it is, I mean, I have pictures of her doing that, so she wouldn't be found. But that's what got me, was that we never identified anything as a bone. Now they should be able to know whether that was a bone or not. I mean, they should have been able to know. So if they don't tell us, the jury doesn't know it.
Yeah, they didn't. It wasn't in the evidence, but they did testify to, and I think it was Gould, testified to finding little white solid pieces in with one of the mixtures that was on a rug, but they never went any further than that. Yeah. So to me, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's the little bone fragments or something. Not the clumps, but not the white clumps.
They didn't identify that after all the pretrial stuff. So maybe it's not true. But people find bodies all the time, and when you talk about chopped up, people find bodies with the head cuts off, or their hands cut off, because they think, okay, no fingerprints, or if the head's cut off, it's just easier. And bodies are found like that. Just go look at your newspaper all the time. So when you talk about chopped up, we're not talking about like he's a butcher and he's doing little things. I'm talking about, getting, just like Scandarito did. Remember, he took dad's head off because it was easier to get rid of him in the suitcase.
Really? Yeah, I remember the hardest.
It's pretty awful.
The hardest dismemberment was, Dizzy is saying that 97, the picture of Anna on the rug. And obviously, if that's really what they were looking for, then it was to match it up with the pieces that were found to make sure that it was, in fact, the right rug. In that case, I remember Scandarito complaining how hard it was to cut through the joints. That was...
Because he was putting his father in multiple suitcases, but then the head was never found of the dad in Scandarito. It's pretty, you have to be a certain kind of person to do anything like that. So, I guess the fact that he's just admitting to carting her away, which the jury didn't know that he admitted to that. So who does that help?
Yeah.
The defense wanted it in. The defense wanted the guilty plea in.
Yeah, they did, because, and the reason the Commonwealth didn't want it was because they felt the jury would then feel sympathy or say he's being punished. We're a little shaky here on what may have happened. He's already being punished, so we can feel that he's not going anywhere. He's going to prison. And that's why the Commonwealth didn't want that in. So to answer, I got to know it, we believe that they were in bed asleep. We know the oldest kid came down earlier in the evening and visited with Jem and spent some time. The younger kids apparently never came down. And we also know if this happened in the basement, which is the only place they found little drops of blood. You're going to be 2 floors removed from where the kids are because they're on the 2nd floor.
And the other thing is remember, he's buying all these cleaning products. You're not buying all these cleaning products if you just have like one smack to the head, you fall down, there's some blood from the head, and then you take the body out and you move it. You're just cleaning that little area. You don't need to buy $500 worth of cleaning products.
Yeah, he definitely overbought. And remember, there was some unopened products still left in the house. So, and to me, the question is answered in terms of how much blood there was. I mean, even though they cut that rug into pieces, you'd have to piece it back together to see exactly what the blood looked like. That's not somebody who's alive when you're dismembering them. That's somebody that's already post-mortem. Otherwise, the blood would be everywhere and much greater volume. So she's already dead. Most of the blood stays inside her body, and just a little bit comes out whenever you're dismembering. Otherwise, it could have been an impossible mess to clean up.
And why, the other thing that always got me is, why is he doing the dumping at the dumpster near his mother's? Okay. I mean, the fact that we have all these cases where we don't find bodies in this day and age there's, you go look around, right? Everybody has cameras and all, and we can't find the body in Dracona's case, right? We can't find her body. We can't find this body. There was another recent case. There was no body, that somebody's dead. It used to be that then there was like, okay, if somebody was dead, there was no body. Well, weren't these cases hard to prosecute? Turns out they're not so hard to prosecute, are they?
No. And in fact, even though there's no body here, as there was not in Michel Draconis, there is all of this, the accoutrement of some violent act against somebody, and DNA of that potential person is found in the midst of the violent mess. So you can get there. I mean, you can get there. It'd be nice to have the body, but no, you don't have to have it.
Yeah, you can get there. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about.
Let's look at this picture once more again, because what's missing? What's missing from this picture? The clothes that she would be wearing itself, right? You have the boots, you have her coat, you have her Prada purse, right?
Let's see if there's
you have her AirPods, but there's nothing.
Some socks. I think those are socks.
I don't know. I can't tell.
Yeah,
but,
I think those are socks.
You have, but the things that would be on her bodies itself seem to be missing.
You have a jacket,
her clothes,
boots, and socks.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, what does that tell you, Sherlock Holmes?
Well, let's just say that.
Come on, everybody, Sherlock Holmes in our chat.
I don't think she dressed herself. I'll put it that way. Whatever was going on, she did not set this up. She did not. She wasn't dressed to go out. She wasn't dressed to go to bed. I'd like to see that picture again of her and Jem, where the kid was blurred out. The picture that was sent to William Fasto. Just curious what she was wearing that night for the big, the gathering at the house.
Yeah, now that this is Michael and I are doing like a jury. Okay, we want to see that. Anyone find that picture? Because that's what juries do. Like, gee, now I've got this idea. Can we take a look at that? Right?
And then they would look maybe at this stuff and say, well, I don't, that sweater she's wearing, I don't see that anywhere.
And did they find it? Did the what she was last wearing? Did they look in the house? Did they find those pictures? What she was wearing in the house? I don't remember hearing any evidence in this trial as to what her last clothes were that she was seen at the party, and and whether or not they looked in the house to see whether they were there. How about you, chat? I mean, yeah, sometimes we go our own way. We're sorry, guys. You're talking about us stuff, and we're talking about stuff. So
those somebody mentioned the boots. Those are mopping boots. I mean, they look like. Let me put them back up again.
They look like they're for tiny feet to me. I don't know.
Well, she's a tiny person.
Yeah,
I think they look like rubbers. Something you'd wear out. To stay dry in wet snow or rain. That's what it looks like to me.
So let's find the picture of what she was last wearing at the party, and I ask you the question: did you hear anything about whether or not there was a search of the house looking for the clothes that she was last in?
Yeah, I can.
And now, jurors go this way. I mean, I'm just interested, being interested. I'm
going to look for it. I don't think I'll be able to find it because it's kind of weirdly described, but who knows? I might get lucky. Again, it's the picture with her and Jim and the boy is blurred out because I want to see what she was wearing. Clearly, it was more than a jacket and socks. Pretty sure of that.
Yes, yeah. And then since that was just yesterday, believe it or not, it would be just in yesterday's testimony, right? When you were there. I mean, it seems like such a long time ago, right?
That picture, I don't remember when that picture was first shown. Was it yesterday? Or I guess day before yesterday, because
maybe the day
that would be
before
the last
yesterday
day of testimony.
when you were the last day, right? You were when you were first there.
I see the one.
so
I
2
see the
days ago.
picture of her and Alyssa. That one I see. Let's see. Nope.
By the way, while you're all interjecting, because we didn't do a rip and read tonight, did you all see that Donna Adelson got moved to a prison closer to her home or something?
Oh, they
I don't know
finally
what that
moved her
means.
out of the reception area.
Yeah, I was. I'm like, Michael Bryant. I was texting Michael Bryant. More transport videos out there. More transport video.
That's right.
Yeah, more transport video. Yeah. Can you see that picture? Okay, everyone, let's Google so we can help Michael here. Picture of Jem.
I'm not
on a
seeing
wall.
it. Seen a lot of
it should
pictures
be
of
actually
her and the
photo.
family. Oh, there's a picture of the champagne box, which I think was a very good argument for the defense. That what was written on that champagne box, could have been more cryptic, could have been for show, but it was very well written, and she was acknowledging that it was a tough year, but we're still here. I mean, why bother to write that if there's a lot of discord going on? She may have thought everything was fine, and he didn't.
Well, that's the thing. He may have been smooth enough to cover up that he doesn't think everything's fine, and she thinks everything's fine, and she's kind of like going to go with everything's fine, but he's in the back of his mind plotting. But we don't see the plotting, because who Googles how to get rid of a body after you've plotted? First you Google that. You make your plans, and then you execute your plan with premeditation. But here, all those searches are so, let me put it, not Moriarty of Sherlock Holmes. Right? He's not a clever criminal. He's kind of stupid when it comes to that, except for the fact that there's no body being found.
Yeah, and it seems clear that he thought that was going to be the saving grace: is no body, no crime.
That was from the Aruba case with Natalie Holloway, with her killer, who
Joran van der Sloot.
Apparently, the father of Joran at the time had said no body, no crime. And so,
But that didn't work out so well for him either.
No. So that whole idea is not really, shall we say, a good one. So you can't find that picture. Anyone in our chat find that picture?
A lot of pictures, but not that particular one. Not the one that I know.
See what it was that she was last wearing, because that's at the New Year's celebration party.
Okay.
He was the last one to stay alive.
I don't recall or see anything in evidence that would suggest normal clothing, either bed clothing or casual dinner party clothing or fancy New Year's Eve clothing.
Or I don't see anything in evidence that suggests that the cops went to the house. They asked for the search warrant of the house to try to find what it is that she was last wearing. Okay.
So anyway,
during the Commonwealth closing, apparently the picture was shown, Michael.
Yeah, I remember that too. Oh, we can probably look at it then if we go through some of the closing. Yeah. Okay, well let's move on and do that then. Before we do that, because it became so important, let me get rid of this.
Okay, this is to check our XDMs. So let me go check our XDMs. While you're doing one thing, this is why you have two people.
Yeah. Now I was going to get rid of this.
Yes, we are. We have it. Okay, thank you, Kyle Sharkey. Okay. It was in closing arguments, and that's where there's a screen grab of it. Hold on, I will get it. The X has this thing now, you have to put in a password to get into your messages.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
hold on, I'm gonna put it up. Let me just image file and G7. Here we go.
G7. Bingo. Oh, I thought
Okay.
you were.
Well, at the stage. Okay, that's taken from the closing. Thanks, Kyle Sharkey. Okay, so what is she wearing? It's kind of hard to tell. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
looks like something
It
dark.
looks like someplace to be in New York. It looks like just something dark. Yeah.
Something dark with maybe
You
some
know.
spangly stuff on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe a
That could
sweater,
be any,
maybe a blouse.
that could be any
Yeah.
party in New York City. So that doesn't help too much, except that you would ask somebody, what was she last wearing? Was it a blouse? What's in this picture? Well, what was her? Was she wearing pants? What kind of
Could have
pants?
asked, could
blah,
have
blah,
asked
blah.
Jem that, because then they could have said, well, where was that clothing? It wasn't. Did we look for it? Was it in the house? Was it on the floor where she changed clothes? Did she hang it up? Did she put it in the dirty clothes? I mean, those are just common things you would wonder about somebody's clothing, but they never got into any of that.
Yeah, right. Never got into it. Okay. So that was, but as a juror, those are questions you come up with, and do you want to see?
Yeah.
So I'm going to remove that.
Okay. So I wanted to look at, because we talked about it earlier, the lesser includeds, which we talked about yesterday, and how it needed to be requested. And because I was hearing many versions of the law, I thought, well, let me just look up the law directly. So I pulled up the actual instruction.
And by the way, on last night's show, we told you that the judge was only going to give the first degree because that was the case. And yesterday she said she was just going to give the first degree murder. And I said, and you kind of agreed, geez, if I'm the defendant, I want something else, because what happened to Michael? He dropped out. He lost himself. I want a second degree in there, because I want to convict this guy if I'm a member of the jury, but I don't think they met the proof for intent. So now today, somebody asked for a second degree. I wonder who that could be, or whether the judge decided to give it.
And the question became, in the true crime sphere, why was that happening? Why was it given? And the fact is, and this is the instruction with the blanks included. The offense of, in this case, first degree murder, includes the lesser offense of second degree murder. As a matter of law, the complaint that is before you, in which the charges the defendant with first degree, also charges him with the lesser included offense. That, as a matter of law, is interesting language for the jury, but it's not truly the situation. Why is that? And we talked yesterday about you have to request it. Go on down to the notes. When the charge is required or permitted, the judge must, on request, charge the jury concerning a lesser included offense if the evidence provides a rational basis for acquitting the defendant of the greater crime charged and convicting on the lesser included offense. So I assume, because there were so many sidebars, especially yesterday when they were going through the jury instructions, it wouldn't take much more than the judge to say at sidebar, so you want the lesser, or the defense saying, Judge, we want to make sure we include the lesser. We're requesting it. Didn't happen in open court, that I know, because I was there. Doesn't have to, though. And further common law says, even if supported by the evidence, such an instruction is not required if neither party requests it.
And let me just stop right here, because this is different than in other states. As a matter of fact, in the state of New Jersey, if the judge hears evidence that would suggest that a lesser included should be given, the judge must, I repeat, must give that charge, whether it's requested or whether it's not requested. All right. It's different than in Massachusetts. And that's why a lot of commentators are getting it wrong.
Yeah, I think so, because it gets a little confusing. If you just read the instruction, you go, oh, it's included as a matter of law. No, it's not. And then finally, it is error to charge over defense objection on a lesser included offense not supported by the evidence. So it takes some of the power out of the judge's hands. The judge is really exceeding her authority if she just says, I don't care what you guys want, we're giving a lesser. I don't think that's what happened here. I think they had a conversation, informal or otherwise. It certainly was not on the record, but that's why we have both the first and second degree. Okay, I wanted to clear that up.
Okay, so that absolutely clears that up. Okay, yeah, that's good. It's good, right?
Okay, so now we've got.
So everyone, class, as we would say, class in Massachusetts, if there's evidence that shows that it's appropriate to give a second degree charge, the judge still can't give it unless somebody requests a second degree.
Correct, and then the judge says, is there a rational basis for it or not? Yes, it's included. No, it's not. So she does have the final, or he or she does have the final word, but again, no sua sponte ability to do it. Okay, so you want to look at some of the closings, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at some of the
Okay,
closings.
let's see.
Look at some of the closings. And by the way,
Three-
let me just show you because we talked about it. This was the picture of her lying on the
Oh,
rug.
yeah.
The jury did not get this of her lying on the rug. She looks like she's doing yoga.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there
yeah,
she was
yeah,
actually playing
yoga
with the
pants.
kids.
Yeah, kind of playing,
they
but in
chopped
yoga
the kids
pants.
out.
Yeah, that's not a good word to use. Chopped the kids out.
Sorry.
But she's kind of like in yoga clothes.
I was
yeah,
going to say
yeah.
they sliced. No, I mean
Oy vey.
they cropped. Is that all
Cropped.
right? Can I use
Cropped
cropped?
is better. Cropped
They
is better.
cropped the kid or kids out, and there was some discussion about how they should best handle that. That was the solution. Okay, so let me see if I can get all these pictures in here. I don't know if I can add anything while all these pictures are queued up. Let's find out, shall we?
Well, I can take away the pictures that I added.
Okay,
Remove
it'll
from
just
the
make it less
studio.
cluttered.
Okay, remove from the studio. Okay, those are the two I added. They're gone.
Okay, we're good. Like I said, just makes it a little less cluttered in the preview category. Okay, so here's the judge getting ready to do something.
As is the custom, we'll hear first from the defense. Attorney Tipton.
There was some issue with clunking of the microphone. That's just somebody, I don't know what they're doing. It's not him. It's Court TV or Law and
What could
Crime.
happen to a loving father and a loving husband? We're making line of police before they search for the unspeakable on the internet. Exposed body of the woman that he wore. Government suggests it was an affair. There's no proof of that. No proof that Brian Walsh knew anything about an affair between the woman he loved and William Pinson. Money? Second reason that the government suggests, family money? Money that the family had worked together for years and continued to talk about in text messages and the sales of property, trying to protect the assets for the benefit of the whole family and the future of their 3 children. A motive? There's no motive. Refusal to consider prison for a terrible mistake he made. The case that began in 2018, there's no proof of that he was afraid to go to prison. Who wants to go to prison? But prison was always on the table. And it was just something that he had to face up to, and something that he did. So, what would cause a loving husband and a loving father to do the things that you heard about in this case? Could it be something that was sudden, something that was unexpected, something that was unbelievable, something that only a medical examiner would understand, have knowledge of, but not a man like Brian Walsh? Something that is terrifying, something that defies logic when it happens. How do we know that Mr. Walsh was a loving father and a loving husband? We know from much of the testimony of Jim Mutlow. We know from simple testimony from Julie Basler from Kindergarten. When asked questions about her experience with Mr. Walsh and the children, that he would show up and he'd be interested and he'd be friendly, and he was always interested in the progress of his children. And how do we know he was a good father? because Anna Walsh trusted him with their 3 children, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for all those times she was up in Washington, D.C. The unthinkable happens. It happens in a variety of ways. And the Commonwealth must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that a homicide occurred, that a killing occurred. Nothing proves that beyond a reasonable doubt on the facts and circumstances and the evidence presented to you. There's evidence that he lied to the police. There's evidence that he searched the internet. There's evidence that he disposed of a body. But there is no proof in all of the evidence that you have heard and been presented that he ever once thought about harming the woman he loved. That he ever thought about harming the woman he loved. That he ever planned to harm. That he ever intended to harm. So, when we talk about the evidence of the affair, when we talk about evidence of financial concerns, when we talk about evidence of being ready to go to prison, those are the motives that the Commonwealth needs to prove to you.
That was kind of a surprise to me. Not the money, not the affair, and I think in the opposite order, they're more believable. The affair, if you knew about it; money, if you could somehow prove that he thought he could get her money to pay off his debts. But the issue about being afraid to go to prison, how is that a motivation to kill her?
I don't know. I mean, I when I heard that, I wasn't sure either. I know we heard testimony that she wanted him to go for a year, get out of prison, and then finish his time so they could get back together.
Right.
Unless he feels that she was pushing him to do the prison time, and he didn't want to do it. I just don't know. But then as we're thinking about it, which I want everyone in the chat to think about too, I want to thank KC1125 for gifting one Justice Served TV membership. I know somebody's already got that, and that whoever's in this chat that has subscribed to our channel, because you can't get one of those unless you're able to chat, and you are not able to chat unless you subscribe. So please subscribe, and you can obviously be subject to maybe getting somebody's great generosity, as we did.
Yep.
And welcome, Ball Mom, to Owen. Thank you very much.
Very nice. Yeah. And so there was evidence of money. So I think that was a secondary motive. I do agree with the Commonwealth when they argued about the divorce and is that a family, financial planning tool. Most of the value in the land and other properties were in her name already. So what are you protecting by trying to, get a divorce? What is that going to protect that isn't already protected? Because if your name's on the title and your name's on the title, then whatever happens to him is irrelevant. It's all in her name already.
Unless he kills her, and under the will, he inherits, or under statutory law, he becomes an next of kin and inherits at least whatever the statute allows him to inherit.
Yeah,
the
property, of course, it's an inter vivos transfer before any will takes effect. So if it's her name only on the title, then it's going to go into her estate, and then it's going to be fought about. And if she has a will, maybe.
But weren't they trying to do that so that it would be wouldn't be access to the creditors of the fake Warhol case? That was the whole point. Was trying to hide the money.
Of course, and that's why if it's already in her name, why are you doing that? What's the matter? The divorce is irrelevant then, because they couldn't get to her assets anyway.
Yeah.
So I just think it waters down the idea that him getting this divorce because it helps protect the family. Well, I'm sure there were some assets that weren't in her name only.
Well, except that if he kills her, then maybe they can't prove it. He gets access to the funds, and maybe he needs funds more than anything, even if some of them are going to go eventually to the creditors for any civil judgment in the Warhol case.
He obviously needed money, $475 in restitution. That was the judgment. So got to get that money from somewhere. Just to me, I liked the divorce to help the family argument, but I think she did a great job diffusing that by saying, well, what's it matter when the vast majority of the family estate's already in her name? How are you protecting it any further? So that made sense to me. I like that.
We're going to play some of hers?
Yeah, we could do that. Let me see if there was a couple of moments of his that, I mean, he got fired up and he was I think he was very good at what he's got. And remember what he's got to work with. This is the case where this guy has to argue to the jury that don't worry about all that other stuff. Don't worry about the lying and the cutting up and the disposing. Don't worry about that. He just panicked. He didn't know how to handle it. That's how he chose to handle it. It's such a tough sell. It is. It's brutal.
Yeah,
So,
except for the motive to me, because of the searches, the motive to me was, it sounded like they got into a fight. 2 weeks before, she, had dinner with Kirby, or had drinks, karaoke, or whatever they were doing with her friend Ms. Kirby. She's falling out of love. And, Jem comes to the house. He had introduced her to Fasto, her boyfriend. And maybe, and she's tired. She's tired of traveling. She's tired of this lifestyle. He won't take responsibility and just go to jail. And, they've had some liquor. And they get into a fight, and he, punches her, or she falls, or something, and it's not intentional, but it's more like a manslaughter. But they didn't do any heat of manslaughter because there was no testimony, right? That's why they did the second degree. But I don't know if that qualifies as intent, because then intent has to be, you can form intent like that, but there really wasn't any testimony about forming intent like that. I think that's why they had to rely on the maybe the financial motive.
Yeah, it's one thing I thought was interesting that they didn't use from the defense was the 2 or 3 references to her not feeling well. There were very specific references. On the 20th, she had to cancel that get together with Ms. Kirby. They ended up pushing it to the 29th. Originally, it was on the 20th, but Anna had to cancel, not feeling well. Then there was evidence on the 27th. She also wasn't feeling well, and that was a little more vague as to what was going on. And then there was the cancer scare, which is a month earlier. All of that was evidence. I don't know why.
And Kirby said, and Kirby's, I didn't understand that. And Kirby said she was really tired. And the other thing that he didn't bring up, which I thought this was a gift, that in the past year, his mental state hasn't been good. He's just been so depressed. And Larry Tipton didn't bring that up. Now, maybe there was emotion not to bring that up, and then he couldn't, because they weren't relying on any type of defense that related to his state of mind.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and that would be an affirmative defense. So maybe he was prohibited, but I thought those were gifts to the defense.
Yeah, two things I think that would have helped their argument, but either not allowed or decided that they weren't going to use them. So let's see what we got here from Ms. Yaz.
Anna Walsh is dead because he murdered her, and he intended her death.
Did she just say dismembered? Wait, did she just say dismembered?
I know she said he murdered her. Let me see.
Yeah. Anna Walsh is not missing.
Oh, he intended her death. Okay, intended her death, not
on
dismembered.
January
Thank you.
1st of 2023, between 6 and 7 a.m. to take an Uber to Logan Airport. She wasn't going to DC for a work emergency. There was no emergency. She didn't say goodbye to her son. That's just a story that the defendant told people. But since January 1st, Anna Walsh has not been seen by her friends, her coworkers, or by the people who loved her. Anna didn't take an Uber. She didn't take a Lyft. She hasn't used her phone. Her phone's had no contact with the Verizon network since January 2nd, 2023, but it was in the vicinity of 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. She hasn't used her bank accounts, her passports, her credit cards, her email. She didn't vanish. The defendant was the only adult at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway after Jim Lulu left around 1:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. After he left, Anna was home alone with the defendant and their 3 sons, ages 2, 4, and 6. This defendant caused Anna's death, and the evidence does show you that. The evidence shows you that Anna didn't die of natural causes, but that Anna died a violent death in her Cohasset home on January 1st. You have the photos of those pieces of rug recovered from the dumpster at the defendant's mother's complex. The rug that had been in the living room. You have the photo of Anna in the living room on top of the rug. The photo shows that there are wood floors in that room. There's blood on that rug. The rug was recovered from the compactor outside of the defendant's mother's apartment and taken to the office of the chief medical examiner for examination. And Dr. Atkinson found a blood clot and a piece of Anna's Gucci necklace embedded in one of the cut up pieces of rug. So look at the piece of metal stamped Gucci. It didn't break on its own. The rest of the necklace is missing. This is the necklace that Will Fatstow said that Anna often wore.
Okay, just a comment on the necklace. Maybe finding the necklace in the trash compactor, maybe that's what broke the necklace. She's making it sound like it broke maybe in a struggle or something, and all they found was that little part of it that said Gucci on it. It was in the compacted trash. So it seems to me that's a more logical reason to find it broken. She also says she died a violent death. Well, we don't know that. You know, it could have been, who knows what? It could have been poison, could have been choking. I mean, I don't know. We don't know what it was. But I think both Commonwealth and defense were given a lot of leeway here. And there was no objections during the closings by either. And I think they both went a little bit afield by filling in the blanks. And you can do that if there's enough evidence to infer. Mm-hmm. I don't know that she, I don't know. I think the dismemberment was violent because cutting up a body is violent, but nobody knows the cause of death. How can you say she died a violent death?
We don't know. We don't know exactly. And yeah, I think that the Gucci necklace as opposed to the Prada purse, the Gucci necklace sounds like a struggle. But then there's that bracelet that's in her coat pocket, which is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Was that? And I've seen a chat talking about it. Was that her bracelet? Who was it given to her by? You know, was there any indication that she was wearing it that night? I mean, if I'm acting like a juror tonight. I decided I would like act like a juror, and these are questions I will have. Not that they get you to the ultimate answer of the question, but gosh, don't you want to know the whole story? Yeah, it is. It seemed odd that they brought up stuff and then just left it hanging. And in the defense closing, they mentioned, we heard about the dirty movies, and because one had a title that said "Cheating Wives," and it's like they're throwing all kinds of spaghetti out there as opposed to other things to see what would stick, without really tying it all together. Like, why wouldn't you want? They mentioned what'd you find? Well, we found a bracelet in the pocket. Can you tell me more? Can you? Yeah, I want to know more. What kind of bracelet was she wearing? It? Did it have her DNA? Did it have his DNA? Who else's DNA was on it? Was it broken? Was it? I want to know more. Did she have it on that night? Let me find that picture again that I've taken off. Was she wearing it that night? Yeah, this is something I mentioned the other day too. This question. I'm curious about why her car was at the crossing. That's what I said. Why is it either not at her home and she took an Uber to the airport or wherever she went, or why was it not at the airport? If she took a flight or didn't take a flight, none of the story makes sense that it was at the crossing. Yeah, the only way go ahead. The only way that makes sense is if he gets her there. Right. He picks her up there. But why? He's not picking her up there. That's in D.C. Why? But what if he wrapped her up and took her in the car and left the car there. But then there's no indication that the body was ever in the car. So
yeah, but that's in DC. There's no way. There's no evidence because they would have known. Remember, he has his GPS tracker was not a GPS tracker. It was a kind of like the collar you put on your dog to keep them within an invisible fence.
right,
Right.
geofence, right.
It just shows up when you go beyond the parameters you're allowed. No way he's driving to DC. So her car's there at the crossing in DC. Makes no sense to me. Was never explored, never explained. I don't get it.
Well, there's a lot of things because this was investigated. Let's remember who this case was investigated by. Okay, all right. Those who did not, shall we say, those who did not testify, was who this case was investigated by. Right, Proctor. Right, remember him?
Yep.
All
The only
right.
one that did was the the Cohasset
Garino.
cop. Well, Garino from the MSP
Sure,
because he had the digital information, which
Information.
that's we haven't really talked about it, but if there is a guilty verdict, top of the appeal is the court allowing all of that search information in that was beyond the consent given to the police with regard to the iPad, the mini iPhone 13 mini, all the devices that the cops went beyond any reasonable consent or search authority, and they found all these location pieces of information, the dumpster locations, all of that. If that stuff's not let in, what do you got? I mean, then you're talking about very little to go on at all. That's going to be top of the list for the appeal. There's no doubt about it. If there's a conviction.
Yeah, and then everyone's. You bought I heard you explaining today at one point the Tyvek suit against, and you wore it on the you wore it the other night on the show. You put on
Yes.
your Tyvek suit. I think
did.
you probably
It
had
was
it.
messy.
Yeah,
It is.
it was messy, and you bought a medium, right?
I bought a medium, and people were, people love, for some reason they're dumping on Diana Walsh. I'm not sure, they just don't like her. They just think she's a nasty woman, I guess. They're saying
also
that
because the body, but also because you had some of the evidence, not the body parts, but the evidence found that they dumped in her house.
Yes, and was that her? Did she direct him to do that, or was he just dumb enough to think, well, I'll do it near my mom's place? I mean, somebody's an idiot. I don't know if it was her or him. So they get the medium. They say, well, he doesn't wear a medium, so she's the one who wore the Tyvek suit. And then I had to tell folks that I went to buy a Tyvek, and they were out of everything but mediums and double XL. So, and that was at Home Depot. So I think most guys are buying the large or X large, right? He couldn't get that. He gets the medium, and he crammed himself into the medium.
I'm sorry. He bought a hacksaw and a hatchet for some reason. If it's not to take her head off her body and get rid of her body, I don't know what it is for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he admitted to that effectively. So
It
gets you back to the same question.
He admits to getting rid of the body. They just, when he wants to admit to further, you just have to admit, you just have to make a factual basis. You don't have to make every single thing that forms what you did when you give a plea, by the way, just so you all know.
And for purposes of the trial, if there's an inference that he did that, all his consciousness of guilt for killing her, that's enough.
That's enough. That was to me. That was the biggest jury charge that the prosecution won. That the jury could infer consciousness of guilt that he actually intended to kill her and killed her. Intended to kill her and killed her by the mere fact that he got rid of the body. To me, that's huge.
Yeah. Why? Because even if you believe that there could have been a sudden unexplained death, okay, just believe that, nobody can believe that chopping her up and disappearing her body is the way to go. Nobody. And that's the hill that they've got to climb. But for the jury, they have to go from that to the intent to murder, which is a very different thing, Yeah. And obviously they're looking at everything to get there.
I'm stuck on the search as being after the fact for that this was some kind of violence. She's leaving him. They had a row, and she dies in whatever it is, and he knows that he's going to get blamed, and he gets rid of her.
Yeah, that's the theory. That's the theory that. But why would you think that? Would that be the first thing you thought in the absence of a history of battles and we see many cases where there's domestic violence and then somebody's dead. Even if you look at the OnlyFans case, right? We barely got our foot into that case, and then they pushed the trial date. There is clearly a history between these two. of violence. We've seen video of it. And so now move to the ultimate death, and you start to wonder, okay, well, how did that play in? There's a history. There's no history of that here. There's nothing.
I know
And
there's
so,
no history of it. Wouldn't that lead to the fact that this happened? This was a fight, this was a row, and she died, and I'm going to get blamed. Like, and he would be blamed. He would be charged.
so,
no doubt, with the same thing he's charged with now.
Exactly. Hey, who needs a psychic? Walshe knows exactly what's going to happen. But I think that's because of consciousness of guilt. Because looking at it from the outside, as an objective observer, I would not immediately think, oh, this guy killed his wife, based on what we know about their life up to the point she died, however she died. I wouldn't think that. If they had that domestic violence history, then I might think that. But he thinks that others will assume that. And that's why he does what he does.
We would assume it.
I don't know if I would assume it right off the bat. I mean, again, in the absence of domestic violence history, which makes it a no-brainer, I'd have to know more. I'd have to know exactly what happened. My conclusion is there was an outing at some point of the affair. He reacted however he did, and she died in the process. Whether it was intentional, he choked her to death, or they had a fight, he hit her, she fell backwards, hit her head on the nightstand. I mean, any of those things that can happen. But I think it was a result of revealing and confronting on the affair. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what makes sense, and I think that's why the prosecution laid into the fact that that at some point, even though she told Kirby that he didn't know, he probably knew. I mean, he had her phone, right?
That was another issue.
Their phones crossed, right?
Well, there's some, the defense tried to make it a confusion over iMessage and iMessenger, but as I've explained before, I get some, text messages from people who have my phone devices. We have the same umbrella account.
Right.
Who knows with Apple? Things are flying all over the place. So, yeah, could he have stumbled upon a message? Sure. And guys, even though he was apparently very not a jealous type in any way, in fact, Anna wished he were more jealous. To me, that's a lot of crap. He might have been good at hiding it, but I think guys in general are jealous of somebody they love being, involved with somebody else. I think that's just human nature, unless you just don't care, unless you're over it. And I don't think I get the impression he was over her. So she's living in another home, another city, interacting with guys. Yeah, that's true.
But she's supporting him.
He's Mr. Mom.
He's Mr. Mom. She's supporting him. Whatever it is, it was a weird marriage. Anyhow, the fact that she was telling people how much in love she still was with him, even when she's telling Fasto she was in love with him and she wasn't going to leave, wasn't going to leave him. She loved him. She just wanted to get back together with him. She wanted everything to be the way it was, So I mean, it's weird. So you never know what goes on in a marriage. Let's face it.
You're right. And what makes this case a little more interesting than I think we expected going in, we expected going in that this is going to be a slam dunk. It's clear what's going on. I don't think the picture painted is that clear. And her concern, I keep circling back to this, seemed to be more about I'm missing the kids because I have to be traveling or in another city. He can't go anywhere because of his screw up with the feds. And so I'm caught in this middle. But it seemed that her struggle was more about the separation with her and the kids and not aimed at him. That's my impression.
Could be.
So,
could be. Some people, even though their spouse has been really bad, will do anything to try to preserve the kids, right? And as well as you should try to preserve the kids. Okay. His mentality says if he can't have her, no one can.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we hear that all the time.
Yeah,
I know, and I didn't get that impression that was the way he was reacting. Of course, maybe this guy is just a sociopath, and so he's able to hide all of that. I mean, look how cool, calm, and collected he was in the videos of buying all the goods.
I smile.
And we already know what he did. At that point, we know what he did. So,
I'm ready for my camera moment. It's in Sunset Boulevard, I'm ready for
I'm ready for my close-up.
I'm ready for my close-up. That's what he was. The camera.
I'm sorry to hear this, but I definitely respect your perspective as a result. I survived DV, and it gives me all the vibes. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Lexus 25.
And you have to become one if you're going to kill it. I mean, you could take the big step pretty quickly, right? I mean, he killed her. It was DV if he killed her.
Yeah, well, yeah, one and done, I guess, if there hasn't been any history. Yeah, yeah.
I know
And
Disney
I think
said there
a
was
lot of
pre-
people
there
think
was a
this.
DV report pre-marriage, but that's a while ago. That's a long while ago.
Objection, Your Honor. He's the con man. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the problem. That's the other thing. If you got on the stand, you're a con man. You cause people to give you $400,000 for fake Andy Warhols, right? You're a con
that is
man.
true.
He's a con man.
And I'd like to know. I can't believe that was the one off or the first time either. There's got to be some history there.
And when you watch all these art fraud movies, people don't want to own up to the fact that they were the victim of art fraud. Okay, that's a huge thing. And it goes underground. They just get rid of it, or they whatever. But they don't want to own up to that fact. So that's why a lot of the art fraud is not brought forward. I mean, we see it even in auction houses, right? Where auction houses, Christie's about 1998 or 1999, I think it was, had a Botero on the cover of their auction catalog. I think it was Christie's, not Sotheby's, one of the big auction houses. And I don't want to dime the wrong one out. And it turns out and this was the centerpiece of the auction. They had to pull it because it turns out it was a fraud.
Jeez. Yeah. Granny Debbie, they were sure lenient with him on home confinement. Well, that white collar type crime, it's not violent crime. Actually, to put him on that monitoring was actually pretty interesting, I thought, because his crimes were internet based. Could have worked out of home, and continued to do whatever crime he was doing. He didn't have to hit the road for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't surprised that he was on confinement.
Yeah.
I was surprised that the bracelet was almost useless, but
but what was he buying her a Porsche with? He had to make restitution. They're worried about money. With her money. He was buying her a Porsche for Christmas. All right.
And it's Porsche. Come on now. Come on.
I know it's Porsche. You and I had one.
I know. In fact, I sold mine to a guy in Boston. It's weird. It was at about the same time.
Uh-oh. All right. So now that we've been into the mind of Brian Walshe, I'm not really happy there. I don't want to be there. I want to come back. I want to come out of that man.
Want to be there. No.
I kind of want to be out of that household. Those poor kids. Kids are always the victim. Poor Anna Walshe. I mean,
only 3 kids. Only 3 kids.
The kids are always the victim. Yeah, they're the victims, and they're waiting for their impact statements. The judge is waiting for their impact statements from these children. Okay, but I want to take myself out. I could not be one of these people that gets into the mind of killers. I don't want to be there. In the mind of my 2B, my poodle, fine, no problem. I'll go sniffing the ground in New York City, no problem. All right, no problem there. Right, but I don't want to be in the mind of a sociopath serial killer.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yep, but it does perhaps help understand what's going on a little bit in this case. No normal person will understand it. We do these things because the vicariousness of the stories. What happens is, you watch stories like this unfold and you go, my life's not so bad.
No, right.
Pretty good now. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say that. You get up in the morning, it's pretty good now. All these people get crazy over something or another. It's pretty good. Just leave me alone.
I think there is a little. I'm no shrink, but I think there is a little of that in the vicarious nature of people watching true crime. It's just, man, that sucks. Good thing that didn't happen to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even watch the older movie Silence of the Lambs again. Okay, that was with Jodie Foster, about the famous serial killer who now there's a Netflix show on, right? Ed Gein, with the who's our famous actor, Anthony Hopkins, right? And, I just, by the way, with somebody, fava beans and Chianti, right? There's people, the reason why they got that, just so you all know, is there's a certain condition that people are allergic to having fava beans and red wine. Yeah. And I forget the nature of the condition, but as a matter of fact, and there's a medicine that's made somehow with like fava beans or something like that. And it's, you can't have red wine if you have this condition at all. You can Google it. Fava bean, red wine, allergic reaction. Okay. I haven't even totally seen Silence of the Lambs in whole, because you see these eyes, they were covered when the officers were found hanging from the ceiling. My eyes were covered, so I never watched the whole thing.
Yeah, because you
forget. Think about what I do for a living, right? I was like, oh.
Hannibal Lecter was so good that you forget that the real bad guy was this you know, that the guy, the monster that
Gein.
would skin
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, Ed Gein.
Yeah, Ed Gein
GEIN.
would. Yeah, and I have not seen that show, and it's so interesting that I don't think that name is a household word like some, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer and some of these others
Right.
that the same producers have done these monster versions. Ed Gein is like Ed Gein, Ed Gein. I'm sure, you know, once you start seeing the story, you go, oh, okay, I remember now.
Well,
But it's
imagine
not a
bringing
household name.
imagine bringing him to life.
Oh gosh, you
Just-
mean
I
as an
just,
AI? Yeah. My husband would know if I was putting fake paintings on eBay. Yeah, yeah. It's such a weird little niche of fraud. I just wonder how that all evolved. I know there's got to be a story there.
If it's too good to be true, it isn't true. That's what it comes down to, right? You get those Andy Warhol's too good to be true. It isn't true.
Sometimes, Sinead, you're right. The scary part, you never know what someone else is thinking, but when it doesn't feel right, you know something is off. Yeah,
Right.
It just ain't. Your spidey sense is tingling, right?
Just like everybody who's people in here have a chat, raise your hand, right? If you have a dog, right? And if you have a chat and somebody comes to your door and your dog, they look fine, they look terrific, but your dog,
the dog
goes
knows.
crazy. The dog goes crazy, you know? So they know. So I want to be 2B and Domino.
I just noticed when I was, you know, doing, I saw, see my little Band-Aid there. That's a Domino marking me. We play rough every now and then, and he wins. So, you know, he gave me a nice little gouge. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, there we go. 2B and Domino. I replaced our Venmo with 2B and Domino. Okay. Look at this. Look at me. Look at all I've learned recently. I can do Cash App. I can do Venmo. I don't know how to take them off though. I can just put things on.
Help me with that. Tickle 'em. Is that right? You think that's what that name is? Tickle 'em?
Yeah.
Tickle 'em. Okay. If you love someone, you want to help them out, not cut them into pieces. I'm going to get that on a T-shirt. Had he never heard of 911? Yeah. Yep. That's where the common sense comes in. And I'm not saying somebody won't believe that you could be so upset and so frightened that you don't call 911 right away. But to see what he had to have done, if you believe his story, it's just tough. It is so hard to believe. So you have to set that aside, look at this from a legal perspective and say, okay, we get that. Is that in and of itself enough to get you intent?
Well, I've seen movies where somebody is so scared they're going to be blamed on an accident that they get rid of the body, and we know that happens a lot in drug overdose cases because you have kids that are they're doing drugs, and when we know now, you know, if you're just a kid doing drug and you're not really a big dealer, but you've given your friend a drug and they die, right? What do? Matter of fact, near my cabin, before I bought my cabin, I didn't know this. Apparently, like right down the street, they found a couple was walking after renting an Airbnb. They're just walking along one morning, beautiful country air. It's wonderful. And in a ditch is a naked dead body. Okay. And the cops apparently eventually it was somebody, there was a house being built down the road, and one of the kids, they were doing drugs and they dumped the body. All right. They just dumped it because they were afraid that they were going to be blamed. So this happens a lot. This is not an unusual situation. Because and they would, because the laws are so harsh now. Like in New Jersey, you know, you share something with a friend that you bought and the friend overdoses, you go to jail for life, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, remember where we are for this case. You know, you can be charged with things. No wonder people are afraid of what might happen in Massachusetts. You can be charged whether you actually did something or not. So maybe there's a little more validity to his fear in Massachusetts. Oh, I'm sorry to hear this, Sinead. Feel better. I'm sick today in bed. My dog hasn't left my side. Yeah, that's nice. Did I lose you? Are you frozen? I see something frozen there. Okay, well, we'll see if she gets back. Let's see. Yep, that is true. That is very true. Yep, and never to be found. You know, there's no, you know, you can't even find any sort of closure to what happened because you don't know. Nobody knows what happened. And I think that's as much luck as anything else, because did Starlink get Linda? I don't know. Somebody's up. Now she's gone. She's completely gone. She has been, I could tell you what she's gone through today in terms of the tech issues, but what time? We're way over time already. let's just say that between the electrical issues with her oven, not her problem, the building's problem, and Spectrum's problems with router versus modem versus what she had versus what she needed, I'm blaming it on that. It was a mess. There's no doubt about it. So here I think is what the plan is. Let's look forward a little bit. Over the weekend, we've dropped a few other goodies. We will do that. You'll get notice of that if you're subscribing. And then on Monday, I'm really torn. I'm torn. I've got some stuff I need to do that I've pushed from other days, but man, I'm kind of itching to go back up there for the verdict. I'd be shocked if there is not a verdict on Monday. But I'm gonna have to think about it. At what cost am I going to go up there? I'd have to do an up and back in one day. I don't know. I'm going to think about it. Obviously, one way or the other, we'll be covering this. Hey, wait a minute. I have a call coming in. Yes.
Yes, we were off. We're like StreamYard's gone.
How come I'm on? I'm on. Here's Linda's appearing by phone. Yeah. Yeah. I know. And Sherry Schreiber said, did Starlink get Linda? So I then explained that you've had so many issues today, tech and otherwise, that I'm blaming I guess Spectrum, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, just reconnected that DNS Pro finished no internet. So
Yeah.
it's showing me that I can get back on. Hold on a second. If I can hook to my iPhone case.
Jeez.
My iPhone case. Let me see, but this is perfect for my day. I mean, and my picture was going so well with my new 10 gigabit.
Yeah, it looked good. Yeah, it did until it didn't. So I've hung out there for folks. Monday is kind of a crazy day. I've got stuff I've pushed to Monday, but now I'm anxious to go, to see the verdict, and so I'm wrestling with that. I'm wrestling with it.
I can't even get on StreamYard with my phone.
Okay. Here, I'll put you on speaker. There you go. You're on air. You're on. Hello, caller. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello, everybody. I will try to get back on StreamYard but I can't even with my phone. It will not let me on. Obviously, I was about to type that. It's been a great show for you joining us, and this is the first time I decided to do the show being a juror as opposed to a host, like acting like a juror, not knowing, let me know just a little bit, too much. Let me know a little too much, but not that much. Okay. No. You have to go out of the I got whole family members here who want to bring in their iPads to show me what I look like on the air, but that's not going to work here. Let me see.
Sinead says nobody puts Linda in the corner. Nobody puts baby in the corner.
No, you're right. But I loved being, I feel like the juror who actually got reported, but to the judge for like, let's look at this piece of evidence that wasn't admitted. That's what I feel like. Okay.
Yeah.
It won't even let me in. I'm not able to hook up the StreamYard, even connecting it with the Wi-Fi to my phone. It just won't let me.
Well, I'll take that as a message from above. We're done. So I will.
We're done. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging.
All righty. Bye now. Yeah. That may be a secret switch. Where's the kill switch? I've never seen that happen. Not from when we're both in our planted studios. It's always been pretty solid, but she'll work that out. I would not want to be Spectrum on the other end of that phone call from Linda Kenny Baden. Okay, so gonna have to kick around what I do on Monday, and I really want. I feel like that I've invested the time over the last 2 weeks, and I feel like I went to the big game. I've used the Super Bowl analogy here. I've gone to every practice. I've gone to every pregame. I've gone to every game of the regular season. Now we're past the playoffs. Now we're in the Super Bowl, and I'm like, can't make it because today was just not going to work out. Monday, I don't know. Let me think about it. I know I see some folks who are encouraging me, and they're saying to wear some heavy coat, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, in the meantime, check out some of the stuff we post over the weekend. We appreciate that. Glad you could join for our strange recap, and look forward to seeing this thing come to a resolution. I think it's going to be Monday. I do think, I'm not sure if focusing on the rug as they have helps us in any way. I mean, we know what happened on the rug. We know what they found on the rug. I'm not sure that gets you where you need to go, but whatever. You know how it works. Sometimes one juror had questions. They ask it as a group. So anyway, thanks again. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. In the meantime, this is Justice Served TV. Please try to do the right thing.
flashes on the sky.